Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to do a recap and review of the latest episode of X-Men 97. It was called Remember It. And as the episode starts, we see Beast, Scott, and Jubilee being interviewed by a reporter for a piece about human and mutant coexistence and the admitting of Genosha to the UN. Meanwhile, Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit arrive on Genosha in the wake of its admission, and apparently Madeline Pryor is a member of the Genosian government. Nightcrawler then arrives to take Gambit and Rogue on a bit of a tour before making the observation that Gambit is obviously in love with Rogue and encouraging him to marry Rogue, which Gambit sadly says isn't in the offing. Back at the mansion, Jean's trying to sort her memories, and Wolverine talks with her about it. She and Scott separately recall their first meeting, which left Scott spellbound and Jean feeling grounded by his gaze, which she was able to look into by using her mental powers to hold back his eye beams. Wolverine is complimentary towards Jean, and she kisses him, but Wolverine says it's okay, she just forgot herself and her love for Scott. Scott, meanwhile, unloads on the reporter interviewing him when his frustration with human treatment of mutants boils over. Magneto accepts an offer to rule Genosha as long as Rogue is his co-ruler, which she thinks he made a condition of his acceptance in order to get back with her. Back at the mansion, Scott and Jean talk about Nathan in the wake of Scott's outburst and end up kissing, but Jean realizes that Scott is talking with Madeline psychically, as she's the mother of his son. Then they argue, and something seems to zap Jean psychically. Back on Genosha, Rogue visits Gambit to tell him about her past with Magneto and how they had a romance but ended it. The two of them then passionately lament the fact that they can't be together. Rogue then gets all dressed up to attend a function with Magneto and others before dancing in the air with him, at which point they make out before Rogue seems to tell him that she can't be with him and won't rule at his side. Madeline is then seemingly psychically zapped as well and gets a nosebleed before Cable, her son, arrives from the future with a warning of danger that there isn't time to react to before it hits, and there are multiple explosions as Master Mold and several Sentinels attack the inhabitants of the island. Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit work to save as many mutants as possible. Magneto then seemingly dies fighting Master Mold while pinning Gambit and Rogue down for their protection, after which Gambit stops Rogue from attacking Master Mold, causing himself to be impaled in the process of destroying it, and seemingly killed, much to Rogue's devastation. That's where the episode ended. So I really didn't think too much of this episode. You know, in the last couple of minutes, there was some great action and there was some great human drama, but that's not enough to make the episode a good episode, if you ask me. I think it needed more, and I think the stuff leading up to that was lackluster. It was great seeing Nightcrawler. His parts were fun, but they were very brief, and the rest of what was there was just lackluster, and worse than that, some of it seemed very soap opera-like to me. The scenes where Scott and Jean are talking and then arguing were way overacted, in my opinion, by the voice actors. They were talking to each other like you might see characters in telenovelas talk to each other. What? You've been psychically communicating with the mother of your child? How dare you? Well, Jean, do you really love me, or do you just remember loving me? It was just very melodramatically done, and I didn't like it. It seemed cheesy and detracted overall from the rest of the episode. Also, I have questions. Is there some other type of flying or otherwise fast transportation besides the Blackbird at the mansion? Because if so, I don't understand why, Beast and Scott and Jean, for example, stayed at the mansion in the wake of the attack on Genosha, as well as during it, assuming they knew about it while it was happening, which I think they did. Did they not have transportation? And if they didn't, why did Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit take the Blackbird to Genosha when both Magneto and Rogue can fly, and either one could have taken Gambit along, which left the mansion with no vehicle with which the other X-Men could go anywhere or do anything in any emergency of any kind, whether it was on Genosha or elsewhere, and that's just stupid. Why? I can't imagine how that makes sense. I also don't get the whole Magneto Rogue romance. I don't get it. I'm not a reader of the comics. Maybe if I had read the comics, I'd get it, but I don't get it. I don't see what she sees in him. I don't see how she's attracted to him. They kind of explained it in this episode a little bit, where she talks about how she first met him and how he helped her deal with her powers. And okay, but like, I don't get it. He's this very stoic, smarty pants, superior acting dude. And I don't know what she sees in him, how she finds him attractive. I don't get it. So that whole part of the episode didn't hold anything for me, which leaves us with just the last couple of minutes where the shit goes down. And that was impactful and, moving to a certain degree. But it also, to me, was angering because they killed Gambit. And I mean, you're supposed to be moved by that and brokenhearted and all of that. And, in a way I am, but I just was so irate that they killed Gambit. It's just bullshit to me that I can't go there. I feel bad for Rogue and all of that, but it's just so dumb that they killed him. And you could look and say, well, Barry, he died heroically and that was awesome. Yeah, it's awesome, but he's also dead and that sucks. I don't like it. So, I didn't think much of this episode. Also, how did Master Mold come back? They destroyed it, right? And if it's going to come back, then how? It wasn't explained. And now that they've destroyed it again, we probably won't get that explanation. So I just didn't think much of this episode. I liked some of the animation during the action sequences. I liked some of the moments during the action sequences. Rogue, for example, I liked how she, was pissed and wanted to take the thing down and tear it apart single-handedly. And I thought that was cool. And, I thought it was neat that Gambit knocked her away from danger, heroically. That was cool and everything. But I don't like where it went, as it relates to his death. And I don't get the Rogue Magneto thing. And I thought the other voice acting earlier in the episode was way over the top and way melodramatic. And I just didn't think much of this episode. Maybe I'll watch it again and see if I can like it better. But at present, that's really all I have to say about it. And as such, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back next week to do a recap and review of the next episode. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.